Welcome. We're here today to talk about mental illness in the church and the things that churches can do to help people who are suffering with mental illness and their families as well. So imagine that you are a mom, a recently new mom, and your daughter is 2 years old, and you just know something is different about her. And then when she starts school, you always said she would never go on medicine, but at school they noticed a problem, so you eventually start her on medicine for ADHD. A little bit later, you go back and you talk about some problems that she's going through, and you find out they add OCD to the mix. And then as you go throughout the teenage years, you have a lot of emotions going all different places, and you find out that her ADHD and her OCD also has bipolar that goes along with it. And then you go to college, a child goes to college, and then things are just not working out, and they end up having to drop out of college, and they're just so upset about everything not working out and not getting along socially with other people that they decide they just really want to end their life. And so they end up in the hospital, and they end up in a day program to treat the mental illness, and you just kind of have hid that as much as you can the child's whole life, because even though people notice something's not right, you just don't want to share that about your family. So that's why we're talking about mental illness in the church and things that you can do to help. So that is a family story. There's also Rick and Kay Warren's son. He wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, and their son also committed suicide after dealing with clinical depression since he was like a young boy. And so we're going to talk about that. Andrew Stockman was a mega church pastor in California, and he also killed himself. And so we're going to talk about him. So Rick and Kay Warren's son, Pastor Warren said that whenever the child was even a baby, they thought that he would grow up and he would be ministering to mental ill, because they knew it really when he was really a young baby. But at age 17, he decided he wanted to just die. He said, we went to the best of the best, and I'm not getting any better, and just let me die. And so Rick Warren just ministered to him, but he ended up killing himself. And he said that just took him. It just took something out of him. It took a 4-month sabbatical, and then he went back to preaching. But he's shared a little bit on social media about their son's mental illness and the suicide. And he said he got response after response, and it just shocked him. And he started sharing it in his services and stuff. And so he said he was just surprised about how just being open would just let people open up and share with you about mental illness. Heiser did an interview with Kay Warren, and she said that if the church did what they needed to do and had a radical friendship with people who had mental illness, the mental illness might get better or may even fade away, she said. She also said that churches need to let the individuals with mental illness know that they're not alone. So to introduce, we're going to be talking about the need for people to reach out to people with mental illness in the church, the proposition statement of what can be done, and the major aspects of the implementation of a program that would reach out to people with mental illness, and proof that it's been used successfully in another church, and what would the world look like if the plan was implemented, as well as what's the action plan. So there is a need. Many people in the church still struggle with mental illness. Russell Moore's interview with Rick Warren said that 90% of people deal with mental illness. They just don't want to talk about it. And according to the website Bible for All Things Bible Online, tells us that every one of us probably knows someone who struggles with mental illness, and that 60 million and 1 out of every 5 adults deal with mental illness. So half of all adults will suffer from mental illness in their lifetime, and half of those that suffer with mental illness do so before the age of 14. So we should also support the families. There's a need to support the families, because the families of people with mental illness often feel overwhelmed because of the demands and because of the the time, the finances, the poor family functioning, and like the role assignments and who's going to do what. They have twice as many stressors as a family does not have mental illness in the family. And I like the quote that Rogers at Stanford and Garland had. It says, "Families with mental illness stand to benefit from their involvement with the congregation, but current patterns suggest that faith communities fail to adequately engage these families because they lack awareness of issues." So, Russell Moore's interview with Rick Warren says that Rick Warren says that it's biblical because Jesus reached out to people with mental illness, and he said it's historical because the church actually invented hospitals and reached out to people who were sick and mentally sick. And it's also practical, he said, because people go to the church before they'll go to a counselor or something like that. So Rogers, Stanford, and Garland tell us that 80% of people with a mental illness go to the church first. And so he calls clergy the gatekeepers for therapy. So Rogers, Stanford, and Garland also suggest that religion is the most commonly cited resilience factor for supporting people with mental illness. So why do people in the church not reach out to people with mental illness? Rick Warren tells us that they're scared of dealing with issues, mental illness issues. According to Stanford, many religious people think mental illness is a result of demon possession or a sin, and so they don't want to advocate taking medicine or anything like that. So Stanford also tells us that there's this negative stigmatism towards people with mental illness, so they don't want to get involved because it's just uncomfortable. So the proposition statement is the church needs to make a plan to reach and teach and minister to families who deal with mental illness. Stanford and Rogers say people with mental illness are present in the church and they really want help from the church. So the church should reach and teach and minister to people dealing with mental illness. Wiseman, Day, and Garces tell us that social support facilities actually help recovery. So the major aspects of the implementation of my plan that I came up with is to increase awareness and openness, just like Rick Warren was saying, to when he opened up, then people opened up and began to share, and people didn't feel alone in their struggles. Premier Christianity tells us that Rick Warren shared about the huge response to his action plan. And just as Rogers, Stanford, and Garland suggest, my action plan will also build awareness. So pastors can talk about mental illness and the issues relating to that, and they can also partner up with other agencies in the community and domestic violence to let them come and present things about mental illness. And each will share their ideas. The pastor can share spiritual ideas, and the mental health agencies can share their ideas of how pastors and church people can help persons who suffer with mental illness. Stanford also says that, quote, given that a religious support system can play a vital role in recovery from serious mental disorder, these results suggest that continued education is needed to bring Christian and mental health communities together. My plan will also try to deal with mental illness holistically, which means we'll deal with physical, so get exercise and eat right, the thoughts, like trying to redirect your thoughts by listening to music and doing other activities, and then medical, to try to get them to go see a counselor and go see a psychiatrist so that they can get the professional medical help they need. And then relationships, these small groups, and the inner exchanges in the small groups that will help them relationally and help them feel like they're not alone. And then spiritual, so they're involved with Bible, prayer, and fellowship. Another part of my plan would be a call to service, because Rogers, Stanford, and Garland say that it's important to call all members to service, like people, families who have people with mental illness, as well as other people who don't have mental illness, to help them to get involved with serving them, with people with mental illness as well. Rogers and Stanford suggest that people should develop peer-led discipleship groups with those struggling with mental illness, and the members study the Word together, pray, and share how God helps them through their their struggles. And so that would be a part of my plan too. And it has been used successfully in another church. Rogers and Stenderford tell about living grace groups. And what they do is there's actually curriculum, spiritual curriculum written, where they go through curriculums, and there's two different kinds. One of them is study building recovery of individual dreams and goals, and it's an 8-week study. And the other one is LLG, Living Grace Groups curriculum that has cognitive behavior. And all of them are built around scripture, as well as learning about mental illness and talking to each other about how God's helping them through it. And also that provides them with relational support, the small groups do. And then also teaches them coping strategies. So the results of those peer-led small groups is it attracts people with mental illness. It's proved to be effective for not only recovery, but also spiritual growth. It decreases their anxiety and depression, and their spiritual growth increases. So what would the world look like if this was implemented? Christians without mental illness would be aware of and understand mental illness. Christians who suffer from mental illness and their families would not feel abandoned or stigmatized. Christians who suffer from mental illness would feel like they belong, and that they do have help, they do have something to help others with. They can use things they struggle with to help someone else. And Christians will all be called to reach and teach and minister to all peoples of all nations, even those who suffer with mental illness. So to call you to action, something you could do when you go away from the presentation is learn about mental illness yourself. Be willing to be open with to share with others about the things that you struggled with yourself. Educate others about mental illness. Take someone with mental illness under your wing and encourage them emotionally, socially, medically, and let them know that they're not alone. Consider inviting some people with mental illness into your small group. In conclusion, we talked about there is a need for people in the church to help people with mental illness. The church needs a plan to reach, teach, and minister to those with mental illness. Necessary major aspects of the implementation. It can be successful because it has been successful. The world will be a better place. So ready, set, go. Your call to action.